China is trying to build a robot workforce before the robots are actually ready to work. At least $20 billion in public support since 2024. More than 150 humanoid robot makers. Local governments building robot clusters. Investors chasing the next EV-style boom. Factories being promised machines that can walk, lift, sort, inspect, and replace human labor. Then one number cuts through the entire fantasy. Only about 12,000 humanoid robots were sold in China last year. Most of them did not go into real factory jobs. They went into research, education, testing, and demonstrations. That is the problem. China is not short on robot ambition. It is short on proof that humanoids can earn their place on the factory floor. If you divide the public support number by last year's humanoid sales, it comes out to more than $1.6 million of ambition for every robot sold. That is not a clean subsidy calculation, but it shows the imbalance. $20 billion of support, 12,000 real sales, a future worker story, and a market still buying prototypes. This is why China's robot boom matters. It could become the next electric vehicle miracle, or it could become the first great humanoid bubble. The dream is powerful because the problem is real. China is aging. Factories need automation. Warehouses need flexible machines. Hospitals and elder care systems will need support. Manufacturers want robots that can move through spaces built for human bodies. A humanoid sounds like the shortcut. It can walk where people walk, use tools made for people, reach shelves made for people, move through factory floors without rebuilding the entire building. That is the promise. A general-purpose worker made of motors, batteries, sensors, hands, and AI. If that works, the market is enormous. Factories, warehouses, security, hospitals, elder care, disaster zones, hazardous sites. But the most important word is if. Because a humanoid robot is not one invention. It is a walking stack of problems. A normal industrial robot wins because its world is controlled. The part arrives in the same place, the floor is fixed, the task repeats. The machine does one job thousands of times. That is why robot arms already dominate many factories. Humanoids are different. They have to balance on two legs, recognize messy objects, grip without crushing, move around people, understand instructions, recover from mistakes, carry weight, avoid accidents, and keep working for hours. That is brutal. A robot walking on stage is not the same as working an 8-hour shift. A robot dancing on television is not the same as sorting parts in a factory. A robot running a race is not the same as handling tools beside human workers. This is where the hype starts losing altitude. The demo sells the future. The factory buys uptime. And uptime is much harder than a viral video. That is why the real customer asks one brutal question. What job does this humanoid do better than a human, a robotic arm, a conveyor, a mobile cart, or a cheaper wheeled robot? That question is dangerous. Because in many early use cases, the best robot is not shaped like a person. A warehouse may need autonomous carts. A factory may need arms, cameras, and conveyors. A power plant may need inspection drones. A hospital may need delivery robots. A hotel may need service robots with wheels. The humanoid is exciting because it looks like the future. But customers do not buy shape. They buy return on investment. The robot has to reduce labor cost, cut downtime, increase safety, work longer, or solve a task that cheaper machines cannot handle. If it cannot prove that, it becomes an expensive mascot. This is why the 12,000 sales number matters. It does not mean humanoids are fake. It means the commercial market is still tiny compared with the story being sold. If most units are going to labs, schools, showrooms, research teams, and test programs, China is not seeing mass industrial deployment yet. It is seeing experimentation. That is normal for frontier technology. The problem is the speed of the money. When more than 150 companies chase the same dream, the market can overheat before the product is ready. Companies copy each other. Investors push for bigger stories. Local governments fund similar clusters. Prices get cut too early. Demo videos get louder. And the real buyer keeps asking the same boring question. Can this machine actually earn money on my floor? That is how bubbles form. Not because the technology is fake, because the timeline gets too aggressive. Unitree is the perfect symbol of this race. It makes China's robot dream look real. Affordable humanoids, viral demos, robots dancing, boxing, running, and showing up on global screens. A planned listing, fast revenue growth, national attention, and thousands of units already shipped. Unitree sold about 5,500 humanoid robots last year, making it one of the most visible leaders in the market. That sounds impressive, until you compare it with the size of the dream. 5,500 units is strong for a startup. It is tiny for a labor revolution. That is the tension. Unitree can win the internet before humanoids win the factory floor. And even strong companies are under pressure. Competition is rising. R&D costs are heavy. Price cuts are already hitting margins. The robot race is starting to look like the EV race, but with a harder product. China has seen this movie before. Electric vehicles were once crowded, subsidized, messy, and full of weak players. Then the market became brutal. The winners scaled. Battery costs fell, supply chains improved, exports grew. Weak companies disappeared, and China turned EVs into an industrial weapon. That is the optimistic version of the robot story. Maybe humanoids follow the same path. Too many companies today, a price war tomorrow, consolidation after that. Then a few winners emerge with cheaper actuators, better hands, stronger batteries, smarter software, and enough factory data to improve quickly. If that happens, today's robot bubble becomes tomorrow's robot supply chain. But robots are not cars. A car follows roads. A humanoid has to survive the physical world. A tool in the wrong position, a wet floor, a box that bends, a worker walking past, a cable on the ground, a part that looks slightly different from yesterday. That is why humanoids may be harder than EVs. The bottleneck is not only hardware, it is useful autonomy. A humanoid needs batteries that last, motors that survive, hands that grip different objects, sensors that understand depth, software that recovers from mistakes, and AI that turns messy instructions into safe physical action. A chatbot can make a bad answer. A robot can drop a part, hit a worker, damage equipment, or stop a production line. Physical AI has a much higher cost of error. 90% reliability can look amazing in a demo. In production, 10% failure can destroy the business case. A useful factory robot has to be boring, boringly reliable, boringly repeatable, boringly safe. Not once on camera, thousands of times under pressure. The price curve is the whole game. A humanoid robot that costs $100,000 is a showpiece. At $50,000, it becomes a serious experiment. At $30,000, some factories start calculating. At $20,000, the math gets uncomfortable for repetitive or dangerous jobs. Now add leasing. A factory may not need to buy the robot. It may lease it like equipment. That changes the decision. The buyer does not need to believe in science fiction. They only need the monthly cost to beat the task.
Let's make the calculation simple.
If a robot costs $30,000 and replaces one job that cost $15,000 per year, the payback is about 2 years before maintenance, software, support, supervision, and downtime. If it replaces a job that cost $30,000 per year, the payback can move toward 1 year. But if the robot works only half the time, the real payback can double. If it moves slower than a worker, the payback gets worse. And if it needs a human supervisor standing nearby, the business case starts to break. That is the real test. Not whether the robot looks human, whether the balance sheet believes it. This is also why Beijing's concern about repetitive products matters. A frontier industry does not need 150 companies making the same early humanoid with the same demo, same walking video, same dancing clip, same warehouse promise, same factory pitch, same future worker language. That burns capital quickly. The market does not need more robot theater. It needs better hands, longer battery life, lower cost, safer movement, better autonomy, reliable maintenance, real deployment, and customers willing to buy 10 more units after the first test. That is the line China has to walk. Too little support, and the industry moves slowly. Too much easy money, and the market fills with robots nobody really needs. The EV industry survived this because the product already had a clear buyer. People needed cars. With humanoids, the buyer is still being proven. That makes the bubble risk much higher. The newest UBTech launch makes the story even stranger. Some Chinese humanoids are no longer being pitched only as factory workers. They are being pitched as companions, emotional support, social interaction, human-like faces, AI conversation. The most advanced UBTech companion models are priced up to 990,000 yuan, almost $146,000. That number tells us something important. The humanoid market is splitting. On one side, factories want useful machines. On the other side, consumers and institutions are being sold emotional presence, education, entertainment, and novelty. Both markets can exist, but they are not the same business. A factory robot has to beat labor cost. A companion robot has to feel valuable enough for someone to pay a luxury car price. That can create premium niches. It can also create hype. And hype becomes dangerous when investors confuse attention with adoption. A robot that goes viral is not the same as a robot that works profitably for months. That difference will decide who survives. So is China's humanoid boom a bubble? Partly, yes. The technology is real, the investment is real, the manufacturing base is real, the long-term need is real. But the commercial market is much smaller than the story being sold. 12,000 humanoids sold last year does not prove robots are taking over factories. It proves China is still in the testing phase. That can still work. EVs went through chaos before they became a global shock. Solar went through overcapacity before it became cheap. Batteries went through brutal competition before they became strategic. Humanoids could follow the same path. But this time, the technical problem is harder. The winners could become enormous. The losers could disappear quickly. And the next few years will decide whether China is building the next trillion-dollar machine industry or inflating another tech bubble. The future of humanoid robots will not be decided on a stage. It will be decided on a factory floor. After the demo, does the robot enter a real site? Does it work for months? Does it reduce cost? Does it avoid accidents? Does it beat cheaper machines? Does the customer buy 10 more? That is the test. Not whether a humanoid can wave to a crowd, whether it can earn its place on a balance sheet. China is betting billions that the answer will eventually be yes. Maybe that bet pays off. Maybe humanoids become the next EV-style industrial shock. Factories could change. Warehouses could change. Elder care could change. hazardous work could change, and countries without a robot supply chain could fall behind. But right now, the gap is still huge, between money and adoption, between demos and work, between the robot future people imagine and the robot market that actually exists. That gap is where the opportunity is, and it is also where the bubble can form. China is not just building robots, it is testing whether humanoids can become equipment. If they can, the future of labor changes. If they cannot, the world may remember this moment differently. Not as the birth of the robot worker, but as the most expensive demo reel in industrial history.